Hi everyone, welcome back to Bernina Club. It is, what month are we now? We are July, middle of winter for us, and so I thought I would start with showing you how you can make your own puffer vest. Now if you don't know what a puffer vest is, it's these very lightweight vests, very easy to wear, they're sleeveless, and they are very warm. So if you're going to make your own puffer vest, there's a couple of things you need to know. So the first thing is the outer fabric is a lightweight nylon fabric, okay? So it's going to be kind of a little bit slippery, but very lightweight. So to sew this fabric so that I don't get any pulls in my fabric or any damage in my fabric, I'm going to use a Microtex needle. So that's the first thing you need to do, is change to a Microtex needle. That gives you a lovely fine needle that'll go through this beautifully. And I'm using a size 80 needle. Alright, so that's the first thing. Choose your fabric. Now when you're going to be doing a puffer vest, you're going to be lining it and padding it with a wadding. So for yourself, if I'm doing them for myself, I would use a wool wadding with a high loft. So I'm going to show you here. This is my outer, this is my inner. So the wool wadding is very light. All the wool waddings that we sell are pre-washed, so you do not have to worry about them shrinking. And the outer, you do not need to worry about that shrinking. And the lining is 100% cotton. So when we buy our fabrics in now, they're telling us we don't need to pre-shrink them. So we listen to the manufacturers. If you do want to pre-shrink, do it first, okay? Now because I'm going to be making a vest, what I want to do is I want to just quilt pieces of fabric and cut my garment out afterwards. So what I've done is I've cut a rectangle of my lining and a rectangle of my wadding and a rectangle of my outer, and I've put them together. Now how are they keeping together and not moving when I'm sewing? Well, what I've done is I've sprayed it with 505 spray. I use this spray a lot. It's a temporary bond for fabrics. It washes out and it doesn't gum up your needles, okay? Now when you're using your spray, I've sprayed it. I'll just pull back the spray so I can redo it and show you. You always spray your wadding first, all right? So you hold it, it tells you on the back about 20 centimeters away, and you just do a very light spray, and that's it. You don't go and do a whole heap. That's all you need. Then you bring the fabric over and you just simply flatten it down. And on the other side, you do exactly the same. So when I'm doing a quilt, I spray the wadding, I put the backing of my quilt, and this is already stuck, so I'll just pull it off. And then I spray the top of my batting, and then I just gently put my fabric on, okay? So it's a wonderful tool to have. Be very careful about some of the others out there because they're very toxic. But the 505 spray, I've used it for many years. The first quilt I made was king size, and I sprayed the whole quilt, and all I did was pin around the edges, and I didn't have to pin inside. It was a basic quilt, it was a rail fence, and it was very easy to quilt, but best thing was my fabrics didn't move, okay? Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is put on your walking foot. So the walking foot, what it does is it feeds the top and bottom of your fabric evenly. So I thought I'd be really clever and put my guide on, and I would go all one way. I found out you can't do this on this fabric. You need to go down one way and then sew back the other way so that you don't get any movement in the fabric because it's very light. So what I decided to do was use my quilting ruler, and I ruled my first line way back here and then 2 inches apart. So I'm just going to lay this down. I'm just using my standard chalk, and I'm going to draw a line there, and I'll draw another line here, and I might get one more out. So what I've done is I have cut out my fabric about 1 to 1.5 inches bigger than what I need, and I'm quilting my piece first and then I will cut it out afterwards. Now I've just gone back this way, so now I'm going to come down here. Now what I'm doing, because I've got grey fabric underneath, I'm going to have a grey bobbin on the bottom and I'm going to have black on the top. Now black is a very, very strong dye thread, so what I need to do is I need to thread the eye of my bobbin case here so that my bobbin tension is tighter, so my grey thread doesn't come up to the top and my black thread doesn't come to the bottom. I need it really, really good tension. So always test a piece on your fabric. And the next thing, if you've got a machine that doesn't have a bobbin case like this, then you'll move your top tension. Okay, so just try it out, see which way is working for you with your thread. You cannot hurt your machine. But as one lady said, I don't know where to put it back. Well, if I lean this back, you can see the machines always have a mark where your tension should be. So you can see a red line here with a dot, that's my correct tension. If I move it, the tension will change, and I need to make sure I move it back and the red line lines up with the dot. So no matter which Bernina you own, you will have something like this. If it's a very, very, very old Bernina, you will definitely have this bobbin case anyway, and a lot of the modern bobbin cases are like this, so you can just thread the eye. But don't be scared of moving your tensions, it's very important to be able to do that. So I'm going to here, and then I'm threading the eye. Now if the thread doesn't go through the eye nice and easily, just cut the end of your thread so it goes through the eye, and it always goes from the inside out. Okay, then pop it into your machine, and I'm going to put the walking foot on. Now when you use the walking foot, I have had a few ladies get a little bit muddled up. This arm I have shown you before, but it doesn't hurt to show you again. This arm is going to go over my needle bar, and if it's easier for you, you can drop the feed dogs down so that you've got nothing in the road. So I'm just going to slowly do this. If I turn this on a side, it might be easier. So the needle bar is what's holding the needle in. That bar there is what I'm talking about. Okay, that's your needle bar. And what you do is this little arm goes over the needle bar. Okay, and then you just line it up under where you normally put your foot and you clip it on. Nice and easy. Now, this doesn't have a slit in this foot, so what I need to do is put my needle down and up so that my thread's gone down, and then I just use something, anything, and I just slide my thread under there and I turn my balance wheel so I'm bringing my bobbin thread up. So I'm starting with both my threads up on top of my work. Okay, really important. So I've sewn back that way, so I'm going to sew back this way this time. And another thing you need to do when you're doing layers, so this is 3 layers of fabric, the other thing you need to do is you need to lengthen your stitch out quite long. Now under normal circumstances I'd do about 3 length for top stitching, but on this one I need to go to about 3 3/4 because it's still not stitching as long as I'd like, and I want a long top stitch. So all I do, my fabric's already held and my feed dogs are down, so I'm putting them back up. Good trick. And you don't need to back stitch because you're actually going to be cutting out the shape of your vest. So all you do is hold your work and your machine will do all the rest. So when I do something like this, the next thing I want to do is put my needle down. So every time I stop sewing my needles down, and if for any reason my work moves, it won't leave the spot where I'm sewing. It's brilliant. So needle down's really good. If you don't have that button, then you can use your hand wheel. So the hand wheel will put the needle up and the hand wheel will put the needle down. But most modern machines have got a button here, so it makes it very, very easy. So I'm just going to sew down here, and then I'm going to show you a finish that you do for an unlined vest. Now, that's gone down one side. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll my fabric. So I've rolled my fabric because I'm working on a diagonal, and now I'm going to go under here and I'm going to go back the other way. So it's only on this fabric because it's very, very slippery. And the thing is, it's they call it waterproof, but it's really showerproof. It's brilliant. You wouldn't certainly go out in a big storm in it, but it's going to keep you nice and warm and dry, and mainly because you've got the beautiful wool wadding in it. And then lifting that up, and then I can just pull that along and do the last row on that corner. Brilliant. And the walking foot just makes such a difference. If you haven't got one, what I suggest you do on this sort of fabric, get yourself some brand new pins and make them the lace pins, because the lace pins are very, very fine. These ones aren't, but just to show you, you'll be buying a pin with no head. And they're called lace pins, and they're probably half as fine as this, because when they go in the fabric, they won't make a hole. These ones are too thick. So lace pins is what you want to do if you don't have a walking foot. And what I do is I pin, 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 sew up to the pin, pull it out, and you'll get a nice result. So don't despair, you can certainly do that as well. So there I have my piece of fabric all quilted, and then what I would do is I would cut out my garment. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pretend that I've finished and I've cut out my garment, and I'm just going to cut down here, and we'll just pretend this is a side seam. So you cut all your 3 layers nice and neat and tidy like that, and now I'm going to put on a satin binding. Now they call this finish the Hong Kong finish, and normally I use black, but I'm putting on grey so you can see very clearly when I stitch it. So I'm going to turn it over, and from the wrong side I'm going to open up one side of my bias, and I'm going to stitch down in the fold of my bias. Now satin bias is different than your normal bias. Both sides are nice and equal, and you've got a little bit of a gap in the middle. They don't join, and that's so you've got the allowance to turn over. So I'm now going to stitch down through my groove. All right, and I don't need my walking foot on for this, because I really want my 1/4 inch foot on, number 37, and the reason being I'm doing a nice narrow seam. Now I'm going to clear my machine so that my stitch length is not 3 3/4 anymore. And I'm just going to show you on one of my sides here how this works. So open up your seam. We'll go from the end. Obviously I'm going to be cutting this, but that's all right. Go from the end, and I just want to do this with this black thread so you can really see what I mean. And you just simply sew down that groove. Now, needle stop down again, yeah. And I just find this foot nice and narrow for this. You could use any foot that you've got. No problem. You don't have to go and buy a foot to do it. You're just sewing in the groove. Now, when you're doing this, you've got 3 layers of fabric, and the middle layer is wadding. So you can't just turn it over and top stitch it. So what you have to do is you need to grade your seam, but it's a little bit different than what you're used to. So what I do is I'll show you that first. So there's your stitching through your seam. Okay, just like this one here, it's gone through my seam. Now if I try and bring this over, there's too much bulk and it doesn't reach. So what I have to do, turn it to the right side and get your scissors and put them on an angle. So what you're doing is you're grading the seam back, and you're going back to, I missed it. You're going back to about, I suppose, 3 mils. You're not cutting your satin bias. You're just cutting your wadding and your fabric, and you're grading it on an angle. Careful you don't miss it like I just did again. Watch what I'm doing. It's quite hard to do it standing up, I must admit. But it's on an angle. And you'll see why. I'm going to do it down low because it's easier. Once you start, away you go. don't catch that bottom bit in. Okay, so see how I've got them on an angle? I sometimes go back and just grab that wadding only, and just on that angle, just a nice angle. There we are. Now, what happens, oh, yeah, that's right. What happens now is when I roll it over, I don't have any bulk and it sits flat. I've left a bit of bulk here to show you. If I've got too much bulk, when I roll it over, I have to strain it to go over, and see it doesn't quite pull over flatly. So see how I've trimmed this one back to here, and I've left that little bit that needs to be trimmed, okay, because it just will not work. So you've got to make sure you've trimmed off your excess on an angle, and it's kind of grades it all in one, like that, okay. So I'll do this little bit to show you. So now you roll it over. Now you're just coming to that stitching line that you can see in grey. So your folded edge of your bias comes right to that stitching line that you can see in grey, and you put your pins where you are going to stitch. And when you turn it over, your pin should be on your bias the same distance as it is on the right side. So I hope that makes sense. I'll show you again. So I'll do this nice and slowly so you can see it. So you bring the folded edge right up to your stitching line. You put your pin through where you're going to stitch, right on that edge of that seam where you're going to stitch. And then you put it back up, and it should be the same distance on the back, okay? Now, when you're going to actually stitch this, I use the number 10 foot. So the number 10 is my famous edge stitch foot that I love. Bernina, honestly, it's the foot that you should buy if you need an extra foot. And the reason being, the whole middle's cut out, and you can stitch to the right or stitch to the left. This is not the blind hemming foot number 5, this is edge stitch foot number 10. So I'm going to pop that on my machine, and I'm going to move my needle positions 2 clicks to the right. I'll just pin some more here to show you. Oops. And I always pin it, and then I always check it's right. See, I've pulled it over a little bit too far. You can tell straight away with the pin if you've pulled it over too far. So there I was there, and it was, the pin was down in the grey fabric, it was too far, okay? So you can tell straight away if you haven't done it right. It's a very important part of doing a vest or a jacket with no lining. So now I lay my bar of my foot onto the fold of my bias, and it's satin bias, remember. My needle position is 2 clicks to the right. Now that's not enough, I've just noticed, so I'm going to go 3. That's better, and I'm going to lengthen it out because I'm top stitching. So I'm lengthening it out, and needle down, always needle down. Oh, I should have put black in the bobbin. Never mind, you'll soon see if it's not right anyway, because it will be on my fabric, not on my bias. Oh, my thread has jumped out of there, which means it may not have stitched correctly. We'll soon find out. Should have looked at that when I threaded it. We'll soon see. Okay, so you need to go nice and slow. There's no race, and you need to make sure it's nice and even. Okay, so go all the way to the end, and I do back stitch at that little end. So now you can see, because I've used the edge stitch foot, that it's, except for where I stopped, that it's nice and even. See here? So what it does is it's even that side. Now wait for this. When you turn it over, just get that thread out. I should have done black on the back. When you turn it over, it's exactly the same width distance from your folded edge. It's so clever. So it's exactly the same distance as it is from this edge on the back, and that makes for a really, really good finish. Now I do that on all my side seam, my shoulder seam, wherever I want to. Now, one thing that I must tell you, I am not going to do that method round my sleeves. I'm going to use that knit binding I've showed you before. You just zigzag as on, and it's a knit folded binding. So I'm not doing that on the sleeves. I'm going to put a knit binding, because you think about it, there's a lot of movement when you've got a vest on, and I think it's a better finish. So that's called the Hong Kong seam. Now where else would you use it? Right, so this is my brocade jacket I'm making, and this jacket is reversible. So I'm not going to wear it reversible, but I am going to do a facing out of this side, but my main jacket is this side. So here's where I'm using my Hong Kong seam. So as soon as you've cut out your jacket, I'll do this one up here, you simply do exactly the same from the wrong side to the right side on all your seams. Now the reason why you do that is because, if I get the rest of my jacket, here's my front of my jacket I'm making, here's my back of my jacket I'm making, and these side seams are both going to have the Hong Kong seam on it and then be sewn up. And when I press this back, it's going to give that finish. Okay? So you're going to do the same Hong Kong finish on your side seams before you start sewing up your garment. Okay? So I'm going to do exactly the same as what I've done, and then all you do, but I'll go from the wrong side to the right side, and I'll put the ordinary foot back on, and then all you do is sew your seam, and you've got a really, really smart finish. So if you want to look in any of the designer stores, inside their jackets, their vests, you will see this Hong Kong finish on unlined garments, or on lined garments they do it. And oh, what am I doing? I don't need to use thread my needle myself. I always have a needle threader. Don't know what I was thinking then. I was about to thread it by hand. So you don't have to worry. Always use your thread holder, because you get the right amount of thread. So I'm just going to sew this on the wrong side, top stitch on the right side, and I've done both my side seams to sew them together for you. All right, so just whip them down. In fact, I'll probably just quickly sew this down and then show you how to do a side seam, because I know that I will be running out of time otherwise. If you need to mark your notches, you could put a little mark with a water erasable pen, so that you've got your notches marked. And what I mean by that is these are the notches to mark to sew these together. So you could do that. So what I do, if you need to mark it, or else cut that off. Now this fabric's got no wadding, it's got no lining. You should be able to, after you've stitched it, bring it all the way over without having to do any trimming, because there's no bulk. Okay, so I really don't need to do any trimming on this one. I just need to pull it over and edge stitch it. Okay, so we're going to pretend that's all edge stitched, and then what you do is you put your right side to right side, pop that one up there, pop this one on here, and you sew your seam, and you've done your Hong Kong finish. It's absolutely brilliant. So this is what you do with a 1.5 seam. So you bring it out here, you still do your seam, and the finish is just lovely. It's very, very professional. I'm going to undo this, so don't panic. I'll just do a long stitch just to show you the idea. Just so you get the idea of how it looks. Because it's easy to tell you, but unless you see it, you just need to see it. Very, very nice. So I've just done a long stitch there. So then I'd go to my iron, and I'd open up my seam, and I would have that one finished off, and I'll just show you like that. See if I can hold my mouth right. And that is your Hong Kong finish. So what it is, you've pressed your seams open and you've got these beautiful 2 pieces of satin binding down both sides. So during the break I will stitch that for you and press it, and you can have a really good look at that afterwards. And then I'm going to show you the easiest method of doing a lined vest you will ever do. It is absolutely fantastic. So I'm just going to stitch this down, and then I will see you after the break. Needle stop down, and then I start off and then pin it. Do when I haven't got a pressing cloth in hand, just use a bit of cotton fabric. And he's still filming it. So there you go, that's what the Hong Kong finish looks like inside your jacket. Really, really, really nice. So it's very professional, it's very, very smart, and that's going to be on my side seams and my shoulder seams. Wherever there's a seam that I can do that finish, I'm going to do inside this jacket. On my other ones, seeing as you are still filming, I do sew my seam, and then I overlock these edges because they're a princess line. I don't want to have bulky satin binding on them. But isn't it lovely? It's a really, really, really nice finish, and I think you'll enjoy doing it. So I definitely will see you after the break this time, and we'll do part 2, which is going to be sewing a lined vest through your side seams. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.